Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Recently I've been thinking a lot about the importance of adventures modules included in introductory products for role-playing games. Recently I did my first impressions video of the new 5th edition starter set, the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. And one of the things that I stated at the end of that video was that while I was somewhat underwhelmed with the overall contents, I was going to reserve my final judgment for how much I thought of the adventure, not having a chance to have read it at the time. And thinking about it, I also started realizing that when it comes to the 5th edition starter set, one of the things that it has to be weighed against is the original starter set's module Lost Mine of Phandelver. And upon reflecting, like the Lost Mine of Phandelver, for a lot of people getting into Dungeons and Dragons in the last few years, this was likely their introduction to the game. This was likely a module that dozens, if not hundreds, of groups have all gone through and would be able to sit around and be able to share their own individual experiences, talking about moments where a critical fumble may have resulted in a character's untimely death, or how a well-timed critical hit could have saved the day for the party members. And it really got me thinking about the importance of modules in the first place. In the early days of Dungeons & Dragons, particularly with first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, as well as D&D Basic Expert, one of the primary revenue sources for TSR was the release of modules. And for many people, that's how they played the game. They just picked up the latest module from their local game store, went home and ran it or played it with their group. It's something that, again, you have a lot of shared experiences where people can come together and talk about their experiences inside of locations like the Tomb of Horrors, or what they found when they went beyond the barrier peaks, what happened when they went to White Plume Mountain, or the Ghost Tower of Inverness, or the infamous Isle of Dread. And no module throughout the history of D&D, in my opinion at least, is more iconic and just more important than the original, I shouldn't say original, but what for a lot of people was their original introduction to the Dungeons and Dragons game, and that would be Module B2, Keep on the Borderlands. So in this video, I'm just going to show some of the various products that I have in my collection that have some form of connection to the B2 module, be it additional copies or updates, reprints, things along those lines. It's just something that I want to talk about, and it's something that I wish I could talk about from a more personal perspective. I have never actually been all the way through the Keep of the Borderlands as a player. I've played a couple of times trying to go through the Caves of Chaos, and either we ended up getting a TPK when we accidentally turned a corner, or took a wrong turn, and stared face to face with the Minotaur, or just real life scheduling got in the way of the most recent attempt to go through Keep on the Borderlands when I was playing under the fantastic roll stats when he was running it over on the Master of the Game channel. So I don't have a deep personal connection with the adventure, but I have a lot of versions, I guess we could say, of this adventure. So I just kind of wanted to take a moment to sort of just look at the ones that I have in my personal collection. And again, definitely try to, nail the point that this was a sort of seminal module for a large number of people that were getting into Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s, which was during its first boom period. Like if we think of the 5th edition D&D being sort of a modern day boom period for tabletop RPGs, well, the 80s was like that as well. Maybe not to the global degree that we have nowadays, but back in the early to mid 80s, Keep on the Borderlands was, again, for most people, their first experience with the Dungeons & Dragons game. So the first version that I have here, I actually got from a local game store way back in the early to mid 2000s, when I was first actually seriously getting into collecting for D&D. This was around the time that I started branching out beyond just the third edition version of the game, which was what the current version was at the time that I was first getting into it. So I ended up picking up some of the first edition AD&D books, and one of the modules that they had at the store was this B2 Keep on the Borderlands. And it is still in the same bag that it was the poly bag that the game store owner had it placed in when it was up on his shelf. I think I ended up paying $15 for this. 12, it was like $12 or $15 for this. And yeah, it was absolutely worth every penny. Again, I've never actually had a chance to run it. I've never had a chance to play through it, but there was just something very charming about this version or this module. And every once in a while, I would find myself pulling it off my shelf and taking a look through it. Now, fast forwarding decades into the future, again, a very, Roll Stats, who is an absolutely fantastic individual. I consider him to be a very good friend. He actually sent to me this copy of the Magenta, the Mold-Vey basic D&D rule set, and in with that box set was a pristine copy of Keep on the Borderlands. Now this has the 1980 and 1981 years on it, whereas the version that I originally had only had 1980 on there. So I don't know if what I have is a first print and this one was a second print, but I was just always really impressed with just how good of condition this was in. And I honestly try not to take it out and look at it too much because I already have a version that's kind of in rougher shape, so that's the one that I would tend to go with. But yeah, we've got the original The Caves of Chaos here, along with the module. And for those that are not familiar with older modules, this is the way that they would come. They would be cellophane wrapped, or they would be contained inside box sets, and the cover was never actually secured to the booklet itself. It was always intended for you to take the cover off and use it for the maps contained inside, whereas the module itself would be stapled together. So if you, or again, weren't familiar with the older style modules, and you saw me rip the pages out of this really clean copy of a 20s or a 40-something-year-old book, just take heart in the fact that it's the way that it was intended to be used. But yeah, again, just a really beautiful cover of it, and yeah, I love the artwork of the walkway leading up to the keep itself. And when Roll Stats was running this, I had the honor and distinction of being the first character in that group to perish when we went into a den that was inhabited by lizard folk or lizard men. My character basically ended up not making it out of there, but after that I got to make a pretty awesome fighter, actually. The first character I had was an elf, and I definitely didn't expect him to reach second level. I was hoping that he would reach the second session, but it is what it is, and it was still a great time overall. And I would love to go back and, at some point, it would be great to have a chance to finish that, or to be able to play it in its entirety once again with Roll Stats at the helm. But yeah, really awesome. And again, I cannot thank you enough, Mr. Stats. I know you say your first name in your videos and all that, but I don't like giving out people's names on my channel. So I just want to thank you very much for saying this to me. It is one of the most cherished possessions that I have in my entire collection. So we're just going to actually set that over with the box. But believe it or not, the Keep on the Borderlands, the polybagged version that I had shown you, wasn't actually the first Keep on the Borderlands product that I owned, because I think it was like a week or so before I bought the polybagged version that I showed first. I had actually picked up, along with a few other items at the time, I had actually picked this up, which is a Hackmaster module for the 4th edition version of the Hackmaster game, and it is called the Little Keep, or Little Keep on the Borderlands. So it is similar in nature, but legally distinct from the original Keep on the Borderlands. And yeah, that artwork very much screams Hackmaster. What's also really cool about this particular module or whatever is it doesn't have the caves of chaos. Instead, it has the mines of chaos. But again, it's very similar where there's this keep sort of on the outskirts of civilized society, and the keep is being threatened by incursions by monstrous humanoids, groups of bandits, or even evil cultists, and the player characters go to the keep to sort of find out what's going on and try to put a stop to it. So yeah, I just thought that this was really cool. I had known about Keep at the Border, or yeah, Keep on the Borderlands at this point in time when this module was traded into my local game store. But I never actually, had seen the original module. I had never got a chance to play in it or anything like that. But I had heard the owner of the local game store, as well as someone else who would work there on Friday nights, and they would talk about Keep on the Borderlands every once in a while, and they had very fond memories of it. So when this came into the store, it's like, well, it might be the closest that I ever get to it, even though it is for a completely different RPG. But I still just the little Keep on the Borderlands, sort of poking fun at Little House on the Prairie, as well as being legally distinct from the actual Keep on the Borderlands. But again, just really cool stuff. I love the artwork is very evocative of that original kind of style with the black and white art there. Just really cool stuff. Yeah, just an awesome little booklet. And I don't even own Hackmaster, so I'll never actually get a chance to run it, but I still think it's kind of a cool thing to have nonetheless. The next item that I actually want to show here is not necessarily a full-on reprint or revision of Keep on the Borderlands, but this is something that does feature the Keep and the Caves of Chaos, and that is the collection booklet B1-9. Campaign adventure characters levels 1 through 3 in search of adventure. So what this is it's taking elements of those first 9 modules in the B series, B standing for basic rules, meaning that they are all designed for characters of levels 1 through 3. And it took all of those 9 modules and cherry-picked certain elements of them to try to create a cohesive storyline, whereas before, modules are typically called modules for a reason. They are sort of something meant to stand on their own, and they're something that are typically light enough in campaign-specific details that you could easily drop them into any game that you're running. But this one here does feature elements from Keep on the Borderlands, including the Caves of Chaos, which we see here, which is, again, really, really cool to see. I want to say that the Keep, that Threshold might be the Keep from Keep on the Borderlands as well, or Castle Caldwell. I'm not sure exactly if that's the case or not, but we do have the Caves of Chaos being reproduced in the collection here in Search of Adventure. And honestly, if I were to run Basic Expert, I think I would actually go with this over just the module, because this way I have an extended story that I would be able to tell. And there is a flowchart that you can consult that does have your typical starting point for the booklet, and then the different events that the PCs decide to investigate or focus on, or locations that they choose to go to, dictates what unfolds in the story after that. Really, really cool. And again, another way to experience the Caves of Chaos for those that maybe missed out on the original module. Now, with 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in the year 1999, D&D had its 25th anniversary, and part of their 25th anniversary celebration was a sort of a reprinting / revision of several classic modules, like I think White Plume Mountain was one of them. I want to say that the Tomb of Horrors was another module that got sort of an update. But the main one that obviously we want to talk about here in today's video is the return to Keep on the Borderlands. So this is actually a sequel to the original module. This takes place 20 some odd years after the events of the original Keep on the Borderlands module. So the players go to a very different keep in terms of how the keep itself has evolved. It's become less of a like a military professional garrison and more of just a walled village. So certain areas have been converted to farmland inside of the keep's walls itself. You have a new form of government that was created after the original keep's founder ended up going off uh, to deal with a conflict involving his original homeland, never to return. And you have a new group of players coming to the keep for whatever reason it may be. This keep is also dealing with incursions by different, evil humanoids. So the Caves of Chaos are very much, once again, a location for the characters to go and explore. But what's actually kind of cool about this is that several layers of the Caves of Chaos have actually been changed. Not necessarily in their layout, the map should be the same, but what's actually happened is some of the caves, some of the different tunnels, for example, the Hobgoblin layer is now actually been changed into a layer that is filled with undead creatures instead, because the Hobgoblins were defeated or driven out during the events of the original Keep on the Borderlands. You have the former Knoll layer is also infested with undead, and you also have a new threat to the keep that goes beyond just the savage humanoids once again. So it's just a really cool kind of update to the original module that still very much has the players doing a lot of the familiar things, visiting the keep, returning multiple times, finding more and more of the main plot actually unraveling as they sort of progress back and forth, while still getting to explore the legendary Caves of Chaos, which is just, again, a really cool idea and something that I would love to see them do again, and have another return that takes place, 50 years or 40 years after the original module, just to see how things have kind of changed. So this is something that I was really, once I saw that this was available print on demand, it was something that I had to pick up, and not to give too much away, so hopefully nobody in that group will go ahead and try to read the module to spoil things for themselves. But when I actually do go to run my second edition AD&D game, I was trying to figure out which module or which adventure I wanted to run for that system, and I have my answer now, because I am absolutely going to be running Return to Keep on the Borderlands. So this is one of the newest items in my collection, and it's going to be my first experience running or DMing the Caves of Chaos, and I can't wait for that. So there was also some more indirect references to the Caves of Chaos in other editions of D&D as well. For example, in 3rd edition, there was some free modules that you could get. They were conversions from the original version to, I think it was 3 or 3.5. And I could have sworn that Keep on the Borderlands was one of them. The only one I could find on my computer, which I thought I had downloaded them all, but the only one I could actually find was Tomb of Horrors. So I'm not entirely sure if the Keep on the Borderlands was one of those modules or not. However, in the Fantastic Locations product, the Frostfell Rift, a sort of a D&D miniature / role-playing game kind of tie-in product, one of the maps included was called the Caves of Chaos. It's the map that you're actually looking at here during the course of this video. And this is only a 16-page module. Again, it's more meant to just give you some new maps for the tabletop miniatures game, as well as some scenarios to use in that, but still give you a module that you'll be able to run. So the actual involvement of the Caves of Chaos is very minimal, because it's all confined to the map here. But again, this was something that I thought was really, really cool, and it was around the time that I actually ended up picking this particular product up that I began my interest in learning more about Keep on the Borderlands. It was within a month or so of picking this up that I got the Hackmaster Little Keep on the Borderlands And then probably a couple of months or so after picking this up, I got my polybagged version of the Keep on the Borderlands module, the actual original module. Now, also in 4th edition D&D, there are a couple of also other connections to the original Keep on the Borderlands. The original 4th edition introductory adventure was called Keep on the Shadowfell, which has nothing to do in terms of like actually being a follow-up to Keep on the Borderlands. However, it does again have a title that is very evocative of the original Keep on the Borderlands and the Caves of Chaos. So I think it was something that was kind of meant to give you that sort of sense of nostalgia, or remembering that, hey, Keep on the Borderlands was a lot of people's introduction to D&D, and there's a new Keep on the adventure that they could use to introduce players to the new version of D&D. There was also a season of D&D Encounters, which was sort of a precursor to what we have now with Adventurers League, and sort of a offshoot of the RPGA, the Role Playing Game Association, where it was sort of meant to be a series of, again, just short, self-contained adventures. However, one of their seasons was called Keep on the Borderlands, where even though it wasn't the original Keep on the Borderlands, it was very much the same concept, with like a network of caves with various groups of savage humanoids operating within. You had the nearby keep, which was a base of operations for the players to sort of rest and recuperate from. So while it wasn't the actual Keep on the Borderlands, it was very much in that same vein. And it also released around it launched around the same time of the D&D Essential starter set, which did use the Menser D&D Red Box artwork. So again, there was sort of an attempt to appeal to nostalgia to raise interest in the new version. I don't have the actual D&D Encounters season stuff at this point in time. It is available as a PDF purchase on DM's Guild, so it's something that I probably will end up getting just to have a look and see sort of what they did, but I'm still holding out hope that they do an actual printed version of it. And that's going to bring us to, finally, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, where we have the Goodman Games Original Adventures Reincarnated series. So this is a series of products where Goodman Games is reprinting some classic modules from the earlier days of Dungeons & Dragons, particularly focusing on Basic Expert and D&D Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st Edition. And the very first product in that Original Adventures Reincarnated line had to be Into the Borderlands, which is a reproduction of not only B1 In Search of the Unknown, which was the adventure that was sort of packed in with the Eric Holmes basic version of Dungeons & Dragons, but it also included B2, Keep on the Borderlands, which was the pack-in module with the Moldvay version of the D&D basic rules. And yes, it's really cool, again, to see these together, and the fact that the Keep on the Borderlands and Into the Borderlands is what they went with for the title. They definitely wanted to let you know that this was the Keep on the Borderlands first and foremost, and the fact that this was, of all the modules that they could have chosen to launch this product line with, the fact that they went with B1 and B2, and again, B2 I think is the more specific one that they wanted to go with, the fact that they included this, or that they had this as their very first product in the Original Adventures Reincarnated line, again, just says so much. This also does have a 5th edition conversion of the Keep on the Borderlands, so you can actually play it now for D&D 5e, and I know that there's already been a ton of groups out there, a ton of DMs who grew up with the original from the Moldvay basic set and decided to get the new version from Goodman Games to run it for their newer players, and it's just a great way to continue the legacy of Keep on the Borderlands. And as I said, like, there's a lot of classic modules, and modules used to be one of the most important product lines that TSR back in the day actually had. It was one of their largest sources of revenue because they were only releasing a handful of rule books over the course of several years. but they were releasing a slew of modules. The B series, I think it goes up to like 12 or 13. Like there's quite a few modules just in the basic series, which is only meant for characters levels 1 through 3. There's the X series, which is for the expert rules. There was adventures designed for companion and master rules. There were a slew of modules like Ravenloft, the Temple of Elemental Evil, again, things like Barrier Peaks, the Isle, or not the Isle of Dread, that's for D&D Basic Expert, but you have like the Tomb of Horrors. There's all kinds of classic modules, but I don't think there's any one module in D&D's history that is more revered and more influential and just more pivotal to people's love of tabletop role-playing games than Keep on the Borderlands. It's one of those things that everyone that I know that began playing with either first edition era or with Basic Expert, that was their introduction. Like that was the first thing that they ever experienced. And they have fond memories of being slaughtered in the Caves of Chaos by, the ogre or the minotaur, or just being dogpiled by kobolds or goblins. So it's just really, really cool to have a module that has been a shared experience not only for so many players back in the day, but has had a legacy that's gone beyond just its initial release. There were all kinds of adventures that were released for like 3rd edition. There were adventures that were released for 2nd edition. And there's some really well-known ones, like for 3rd edition, you had the Sunless Citadel, you had the Forge of Fury, you had the Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, but very few of those have had the same kind of impact on people as Keep on the Borderlands. I think if I had to choose an adventure or a module that has had even a fraction of the influence on new people getting into the hobby and it being their first experience and something that they will always fondly remember, The Lost Mine of Phandelver for 5e is probably the closest that we've had to that in quite some time. I mean, with 3rd edition, there was much less of an emphasis on adventures and a much greater emphasis on rulebooks. 4th edition had a bit of a mix of modules and rule booklets, but even then, rule booklets were still kind of the majority focus. And even with 5th edition, they do have a greater focus on adventures, but they have always tended to be the larger hardcover books, which are meant to take place over a much larger span. And there's just enough of them that, again, very few of them would be used to the extent of the starter set Lost Mine of Phandelver would be, or to definitely not to the extent of Keep on the Borderlands. So yeah, one of the most important modules in the history of D&D, and as we see, it has a footprint in every other edition of the game since its inception, and I do hope that that continues with the next version of D&D and beyond. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this just sort of showcase of different iterations of Keep on the Borderlands. Feel free to share your experiences with this module in the comments section below. Yeah, I look forward to hearing anything that you guys have to say about this incredible module from, the golden age of, the first boom period for the D&D game. Anyway, thank you again very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.